Good morning, I'm Pastor Thomas Heyn, and I am the administrator for the Board for World Outreach for the Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Before we get going, I'm going to show you a welcoming shawl from India. We just came back from India about a week and a half ago, and there's a ceremony that goes with this that I'll explain later. But I'm going to give this away if anyone's interested. Now, some people might look at it and say, I don't have any interest in it, and that's fine. But if some of you would be interested, and I'll explain the story behind this, if you're interested in taking this home, there's going to be some kind of a box or a plate or something going around with slips of paper. Put your name in it, and at the end of it, we'll draw a name, and someone who wants to take this along will be welcome to do so. So I just wanted to let you know what that was ahead of time when you see that coming around, that you can have this beautiful welcoming shawl. I've been asked to present two parts on the presentation. One of them is on cross-stitch. You have a folder that you should have received. If you grab that folder briefly, and on the inside you will see a folder like this called cross-stitch, and it will have that logo on it. You'll also see in there a copy of the cross-stitch newsletter that comes out occasionally. It is often sent to pastors as an electronic file that they can print out and distribute to their congregations. Let me just talk to you briefly about what cross-stitch is. A number of years ago, my predecessor, Pastor Steve Peterson, he was administrator of the Board for World Outreach, and there were area rallies like this one, as well as individual congregations that might have had some mission projects. And any individual congregation or even a group of congregations like this one with a rally, you can only raise so much money. And so there were certain projects that went unfunded because there was no individual congregation or group that was able to provide for it. And so a decision was made to form a loosely organized organization called Cross Stitch. And on the back side, you can see the different circuits of the Synod where they had their rallies 2019, 2020. You will see yourselves toward the end of that list with the Southwest Circuit, Hope, West Jordan, Utah. And what the purpose of Cross Stitch was to choose some projects that required a little bit additional funding and to recognize we may not be able to fund this on our own as a congregation or as one circuit. But if we all join together, these are some of the kinds of projects then that we can support. Now, it's always your choice on what you want to support. And in your business meeting, I would think that one of the things you'll decide is if there's an offering, where do we want an offering to go? Or mite boxes. Some ladies' organizations have mite boxes. Sometimes there's a collection with a worship service, and then where is that offering going to go? It's always your choice on where you want it to go. But these are some projects that Cross Stitch says if we join together, we can fund some of these projects, and maybe part of the offering, or maybe all of the offering, you decide, will go and help these kinds of projects. So for example, this year, you'll see that India Orphan Support, $20,000 to help support the orphanages in India. We had another $5,000 that went to India primarily for India scholarships, a little bit on repairs of orphanages, but mostly for scholarships. Briefly, I'll tell you about that. In India, when women get basically through their schooling, they really are given no training. These India scholarships are to help those who are in the orphanages get additional training. And one of the big programs is a nursing program. And so we have some of the orphans, both the boys and girls, that go into a nursing program and learn a skill so that they are able to go out into the world then and have actually a skill that helps them support themselves and their families. So we do that through these India scholarships. In Peru, Food for the Jungle schools. In spite of the fact of living in the Amazon with vegetation all around and animals, nutrition is really difficult to come by in the jungle. And so we help provide nutrition. I can talk about that a little bit more later if you would like. And then our home mission program, $5,000 goes to the home mission program for outreach, a total of $35,000. So what Cross Stitch says is here's $35,000 worth of projects that we would like to fund. And if your organization would like to help out, then direct your organization or part of your organization's funding to cross-stitch, because these are the projects that we will fund in this year. And every year we review that list. Sometimes we've gotten more than that, and then we actually have the pleasant duty of saying, we've got to figure out how to best use this additional offering. But that's what cross-stitch is. It's a gathering, it's a loose organization of all the different circuits, especially the women's mission programs, ladies' aids. Those are the ones that historically have been the ones to do it. And it's to loosely organize together and gather together so that together you, working with others, can help support some of the work that our synod does in its world mission outreach. Let me just take just a brief moment. Any questions on cross-stitch, what it is? Any questions you have? Okay, and if you do have some later on, please feel free to contact me. So let me begin then, and I've covered cross-stitch. This year, what I want to talk about in the presentation is a little bit where we have come as a synod, but we are at a real crossroads right now because after 50 years of doing mission work with missionaries in the field, we are at a point where there are no longer any missionaries in the field. We'll talk about the work that's been done. You can ask questions about why don't we have missionaries here or there. The basic reason is we have national churches that have their own national ministerium with pastors. And so the nature of our work has changed. But I want you to notice something. In 1964, if you can see that, it's a little bit bright, but I'll just run through it. In 1964, the ELS had separated from what was called the Synodical Conference, where it was affiliated with Wisconsin Synod and Missouri Synod. So ELS, Wisconsin Synod, Missouri Synod, and what was called the Synodical Conference. Because of doctrinal differences, there was a separation, and suddenly ELS, which had been participating quite a bit in Missouri Synod missions, and even sending pastors into Missouri Synod missions, said, we're no longer affiliated with Missouri Synod. What do we have now for a world mission program? And in 1964, the Synod and Convention urged the Synod's Mission Board, quote, to diligently continue to seek a foreign mission field. This is important for us as a church body to have missions, to be looking outward and not just become consumed with looking inward and our problems in our congregation, although we have to deal with those, but we also need to look out and recognize our role too in carrying out the Great Commission and taking that gospel to all nations. So the convention said, we need to have a world mission program as a synod. Continue to seek that field. A year goes by in 65. Don't just seek, you find a mission field. 66, you intensify the search, you're still not coming up with any mission field. 67, enter a Spanish-speaking area of South America. And in 1968, a missionary was finally sent, and he was sent to Peru. So Peru is where we began work in 1968. We now have over 50 years that we've been involved with Peru. So I'm showing you just a little bit of the country here, the map. In South America, we are working primarily in 4 areas. This is Lima, the capital. This is Chimbote, which is a city about 4 to 5 hours up the coast. I'm missing, no, I'm not. This is a new area where we may be working called Cajamarca. You'll see that in the slide in just a moment. And then this is Tarapoto, which is the gateway to the Amazon, where we are working with some of the Amazon indigenous tribes. So after 50 years of service, our last missionary came home in 2018. It was missionary David Heiser, his wife Ruth. They came back, and now we have a church body that is basically on its own. It is continuing to grow, to train as pastors, still needs a lot of financial support from us because of the poverty in Peru. But we've run into some problems as we have had our missionary leave. And it's that a lot of the earlier work has not continued for various reasons. Here on the left, if you can make that out, the pastors on the far right, and then some mission board members and some of the other Peruvian pastors were meeting with him. What you see on the right, that is his church. And it is actually, this building right here is his church. All this belongs to the church, but there simply is no money to build the church and to continue it. And in fact, this pastor now, this past year, retired. and there's nobody taking over for him. The question is what's going to happen to the congregation? We need to be training pastors and help them train pastors. Here's an even sadder story. This is what's left of a church. You'll notice there's no roof on it. The roof had caved in. It was a church where we thought we had a vicar serving, and unfortunately that vicar decided that the secular work he had to do to support himself was more important than his pastoral work. And for several years, they had no worship services. We didn't know he was continuing to receive some kind of support from us, but not carrying out his work. And after missionary Heiser left and the Peruvian leadership started going around and checking on the congregations, they found this one with nobody serving the congregation. The congregation has basically disappeared. The vicar who was serving, he's no longer with us. The church fell into disrepair, and we're going to try to sell that land because we need the money to build new churches where there is work going on. But this is kind of a growing process in world missions, as you learn sometimes about the tragedies and the sadness, and then you just have to pick up and move forward as we carry on that mission work. Here's the seminary building. It was built a number of years ago. It's kind of in the shade there, but they took the old seminary building, renovated it. There's a new facade on it. On the far right side, on the lower level, if you could look into those windows, you would see that that was the seminary's chapel. They do have a congregation that meets there, but right now we have no seminary students in Lima. So there's no seminary training taking place in Lima at this seminary. Although we still have a seminary faculty, we have the building, but we're lacking students. So when Pastor Weber mentioned this morning in his opening devotion, things to pray for, these things that I'm sharing with you, these are some of the things to be praying for in world missions. These are our brothers and sisters in Peru, and they're looking to the future. And they're really having some questions. What are we going to do for our future pastors and leaders? And they need not only, right now, what's more important than financial resources to support the seminary program is candidates that will actually be willing to serve or to attend the seminary to be trained. These are some of the things then that we can be praying for. So there is a congregation there. It's also used as a place for workshops for teachers because we have a couple of schools in Peru, Christian day schools. This is one of them called Jesus Redentor School. It's built up on the hillside in one of the poorer barrios or neighborhoods. On the left side, you see one of the classrooms, and the man standing in the back is Giovanni Rivas. He's a pastor, and he is administrator of that school and teaches religion, and just a fantastic pastor. And we're really blessed to have him working with that school in all of the religion classes and teaching the kids. There's another school called Martin Lutero School. This is down closer into the main city, not up on the hillside. A little bit better neighborhood, probably a little bit better financially, maybe able to support themselves a little bit better. And he goes to this school as well and teaches. And both of them are, the director of the school is a man named Jaime Cortez. He's a pastor. We'll see him in a few moments. But the two schools right now are bright spots for us in the city of Lima. And the pastor that is working there, Pastor Giovanni Rivas, is doing some good work there. We have another pastor in Lima called Andres Robles. And it's interesting because a lot of the pastors have to be bivocational. They have to have some other kind of work to support themselves. He happens to be a chiropractor, and you can see he brings his portable table into the church, and he does chiropractic work during the week. And you can see him here standing in front of his church, and we've encouraged him to put up some kind of signs perhaps on the walls. You know, I'm here and I can help you with your physical ailments. But I'm really here for something much more important, your spiritual ailments, and that's what we deal with here in this church. And so this is something that is somewhat common in some of our world mission fields, is try to get the people into the church building so they don't think you're some kind of a weird cult or something that they should stay away from, but come on in. You know, I'm here offering the services that are going to help you, but I've got always a more important service to share with you, the message of the gospel. He also used to be a carpenter, and all of the benches, there's a baptismal font. If I had time, we could zoom in on it. So he's built a lot of the furnishings inside of the church. As I mentioned, we do some of our work down in the jungle. These are men from the Shawi tribe. On the far left and on the far right are two Peruvian pastors. They are not Shawi indigenous people. They are Peruvian pastors. Jaime Cortez on the left, he's the what's called the promoter or the promotor of the schools. He also is a seminary professor, and he wears probably about 4 or 5 different hats. On the right-hand side is Ronald Rivas. He's also a Peruvian pastor living in Tarapoto. Tarapoto is a city of about 250,000. It's the gateway into the jungle. About Matt, is it every month, every other month that they come to the Tarapoto?
Every other month.
Every other month, you see the men in the middle are all from this Shawi tribe in the villages. You've got to travel over a mountain, get onto the river, and you've got to travel by boat up the river, and that's where they're from. And then every other month, they make their trip to Tarapoto, and Pastor Cortez and Pastor Rivas teach seminary classes. Sometimes there's another pastor, Pastor Segundo Gutierrez. He comes down and he also teaches at times. Sometimes we've had the chance when we visit on occasion to do some teaching. On the right, you see them in the villages where they are meeting. There's, again, Pastor Cortez, Pastor Rivas, and they're meeting with some of the people in their village in the jungle. This is one of the places in Peru where we're seeing a lot of success, a lot of interest. And it's always interesting how you see the gospel move throughout a country and to the places where you see, at least from a human standpoint, look at the outward success from our viewpoint. Well, this is one of the places where we're having some real blessings is in the jungle work in Peru. The city to the north of Lima that I mentioned before is the city of Chimbote. In the middle here, this is Pastor Segundo Gutierrez. He's president of the seminary. He's also pastor of that congregation, and he is a missionary for the Peru church. This is his congregation gathered in Chimbote. It's a city right on the coast. It used to be a huge fish processing city. He says it's the place where ceviche was invented. For those of you who know what ceviche is, made with raw seafood and cured, if you will, with lime juice. He says that that's where it was invented, was in Chimbote. It used to be a big fishing city, big city. Fishing has moved out of there. The fishing grounds have been depleted somewhat. But he has a congregation there. I think it's probably the largest one we have in Peru. He's looking to expand and move to a new location. And so they have bought some land in Nuevo Chimbote or New Chimbote, another city nearby within 5 miles. And they are standing from the road where I am standing taking the photo to here, and probably over to about here and back. They bought that property so that they can build a new church. If I'm standing here and I pivot around 180 degrees, this is what I'm looking at. This is all new construction. And those houses are being bought by doctors, by police officers, by other professionals. So this is a place in this new city where they can probably build a congregation. The hope is that we can build a congregation that actually will support itself and not require ongoing contributions from outside, so that we now can take on more and more of the work of building our church, supporting it ourselves, and maybe even going out and doing more mission work. So this is a real promising project here in Chimbote. New houses, new neighborhood. In fact, Pastor Gutierrez, his wife is a nurse, his sister-in-law is a nurse, he has one son who's a surgeon, one son who's a dentist, and so for this church that they're building, they want to have consultation rooms where people can come in and get free initial consultations, go out into the community providing some health services, but again, we're much more interested in the health of your soul, not just the health of your body, and so using those health services that they provide to reach out into the community. This is the city of Cajamarca that I mentioned up in the Andes Mountains. This is Pastor Gutierrez on the left. That's his father. What you see on the right is a produce warehouse that his father had, and his father donated. Said, let's clear this thing out. It's right in the city. Clear it out, and let's build a new church here. And so they want to build a church, and they want a pastor too. Right now there are about 12 to 15 people meeting regularly and getting services that are live streamed from Chimbote, from Pastor Gutierrez's congregation, and he goes and visits there about once a month, 8 hours through the mountains to get up to that city. If you saw the latest Lutheran Sentinel, there was a story in there called The Ransom Room. Some of you may have read that. Ransom Room is in Chimbote. That's where the Ransom Room is. And if you haven't read it, try to get a copy of that Sentinel and read that story. It's a fascinating story about the history of that World Heritage Site. 1993, there was a lot of activity from communist guerrillas in Peru, and it's called the Shining Path. It actually was connected with Chinese communism, but they were very much on the ascendancy in Peru. And the mission board decided we need to look for alternatives where our missionaries can go if we have to leave Peru quickly. They went down to Chile in 1993. Here you can see, again, just that long, long country of Chile along that Pacific coast. Santiago is where we began. This is the city of Linares, where we also have a congregation. And our last missionary, after 25 years in Chile, after doing work for 25 years in Chile, Pastor Timothy Erickson came back a little over a year ago. And so we have no missionaries at all in South America. We have two national churches, a Peruvian church and a Chilean church. And so here you see Pastor Erickson, his wife Ellen on the right, Chelsea Dici. Some of you may have heard her story. She went down there to teach English as kind of a lay missionary, reaching out to the community through English classes. She has gotten married. I think she's probably returning to the United States within another year or two. But there are other people down there. This was a brand new church. That used to be a pool hall, and it was converted into a church. They raised the roof to give a kind of an elevated roof like what you have here in your church. There's a part of it where the roof is elevated. It's served by the man on the left. His name is Mario Galvez. He's the one and only, at this time, ordained Chilean pastor. He serves that congregation. Here you see him on the left, and what you see behind him are medals because he is a two-time world champion, Kenpo Karate world champion. It's interesting because he has now been able to develop a system of schools, of karate schools in Santiago. And I talked to you about how you have to have some kind of secular work to support yourself and then carry on the pastoral work. His karate schools are so successful, even though he's still involved with them, there are weeks that go by where he's putting in 40, 50 hours as a pastor. And he's able to do it because of the success of his karate schools. He's practically a full-time pastor, very dedicated to his work. On the right, you see in the middle is Guillermo Ruz. On the right is Victor Enriquez. Is that right, Matt? Enriquez? Yeah. And so that's Victor. Both of them are vicars. They've gone through seminary training. We're waiting to see if we can get them to the point of being ordained pastors. They are serving congregations as vicars. There are 3 congregations in Santiago. Then we have the city of Linares to the south, which I talked about. You can see a church that has been built recently. There is the inside of the sanctuary. Pastor Herb Hunnerkock, who was a pastor in Kissimmee, Florida, went down for 3 months and he worked in Linares with them. They've been without a pastor for over 15 years. We're trying to figure out how do we serve this congregation. All of our men in Santiago have their own businesses. That's how they're able to continue to be pastors and support themselves. We don't have anyone down in Linares who is up to this point has been able to do that. And so we've been looking for how do we get a trained pastor to serve this congregation in Linares. Here you see Pastor Hunnerkock with the man on the right, Ariel Arriagada. There he is, a little bit bigger picture. He has his own metal fabricating shop that he has, and he's been going through some studies. There's another man also who happens to be a North American. His name is John Gross. He originally went down to South America with Kingdom Workers to teach English in a nearby community about 20 miles from Linares. And after working there for a while, they found out that working in this city 20 miles away was really not productive in being able to reach out and bring people to the church in Linares. So he has gotten into videography work, and about, what would it be? I guess it was last summer. Last summer he said, I'm willing to study to be a pastor. And he and his wife have moved to Chile with the idea of living and staying in Chile. So right now he is taking classes online at our Bethany Lutheran Seminary And in a number of years, it'll be a little bit longer program than what we normally would go through, but in a number of years, he's planning on being a pastor and living there in Linares and serving that congregation. His wife on the left, her name is Elise, and then to the right is Jennifer Praber, and both of them are working with Kingdom Workers. Kingdom Workers, the purpose of that, and I don't want to get into a big Kingdom Workers presentation, but they basically want to go to places where we have missions. They do it in the United States, but out in the world where we have some kind of a confessional Lutheran mission, and then they work with humanitarian outreach with the idea of reaching out to the community, and then again, bringing them to the church and pointing out, we do this humanitarian work because the love of Christ compels us. But now we want you to know about the love of Christ. What they are doing is setting up a program in Linares, and they want to expand it further. We want to teach and train the Chileans. They've identified 2 issues in Chile that they want to address. One of them is obesity, and one of them is diabetes. And so they're setting up some educational programs, invite people, learn about what you should do, what you need to do, and we'll help you with dealing with these physical problems. But as I've mentioned multiple times, we're always steering towards something else, not just the physical problems, but the real spiritual problem, and we have an answer for that.